Good afternoon, Gatherverse Summit. I am so happy to be joining you all today. I am Kathleen Cohen, and I am super grateful to Christopher Lafayette and his team, including Joanne Berry and Donaldi Savant, for inviting me to the summit and to share some of my recent work. Christopher and I recently joined the stage in Germany for the Aurea Awards, and in prep for that talk, we realized we had a lot of common ground regarding humanity. So when we talk about the Gatherverse and the Gatherverse themes, including humanity first, accessibility, equality, education, community development, safety, privacy, and wellness, I knew I wanted to be in conversation again with Christopher, and he and I were going to bring some serious wisdom and experience together in staking the future of virtual worlds. So remember the frame of the World Wide Web as the information superhighway way back when? Well, Facebook's Meta is seeming to echo back to that, while many of us are already working towards a future which is completely decentralized across many accesses, including governments, community, and equity sharing. And if Facebook is the interstate, then I think we're on the scenic route. So I often get called a tech humanist in how I see our path forward. I'm the founder of the Collaboratorium, a consultancy which is comprised of immersive research, client solutions, and public engagement with over 25 years in media and entertainment and production. I also am an advisory board member and very proud for HoloRide, which is a German-based automotive and immersive entertainment company. And last fall, I also became the first immersive artist in residence for Searles Place, which is an NEA, National Endowment for the Arts, funded art residency in the state of Idaho. So my focus for this residency was on Indigenous peoples and the neurodiverse communities and how both will add value and contribute in virtual worlds. But my own novice's understanding of Indigenous peoples and the science completely shifted my perception towards the ings in life and not the things. I literally found myself often sharing the sentiment that I learned with others now, that it's not the thing, it's the ing. It's not the noun, it's the verb in life that has to be embedded and coded and scripted. Ings like what it means in terms of experiencing and sharing and listening to an object in a scenario, of being on a journey of a different kind of space and time that's not linear, like we all know, but circular. It's so beyond comprehension for some of us. I've learned so much. I learned that an object is not just an object within the Indigenous community, right? And why we shouldn't just label objects as such in virtual worlds as things. Mostly, I learned that maybe I'm creating this path or passageway for us to understand that Western science has so much to learn from a 2,000 to 80,000 year old Indigenous science. So maybe we should time travel just a little bit. Let's begin by framing up the last couple of years, discussing how human experience is evolving, right? Making some predictions within the next 5 years, the building phase of humans in virtual worlds. I'll take a look at that. I'll consider 10 years out, come 2032, even 2045 in the singularity. I'll consider makers in the context of AR, VR, MR, and immersive, as well as all of the consumers. So what lessons can we learn from the recent past, right? Let's look at the former lyricist of the Grateful Dead and accidental internet shaman, believe it or not, and the founder of the Electronic Frontier Foundation, whose affinity for wide open spaces and free expression completely transformed him into the leading defender of the unfettered internet. How might John Perry Barlow's Declaration of Cyberspace, which is sort of like the Declaration of Independence for the metaverse, and that's already 25 years old, how might that be a spark to think about the roles and the responsibilities of citizens in all of these brave new worlds? Do we need a document like that right now? Who is going to be the stewards of this new leadership? And if the makers are in time for a change, what expectations as content consumers do we have? At the end of this talk, I'm going to share some takeaways of what principles might guide the scaffolding of this emerging future, and perhaps a call to action for all of us. Being human, becoming human, and beyond human. In other words, we, and our surroundings. I've said this before, the way we approach our new meta, and not that meta's future, needs to be viewed from 3 different use cases that help us all be human. The I, just the human experience point of view. The we, what is our human to human relationship point of view? And finally, what are our surroundings, and having the opportunity to have a payoff for humanity, that our humanity is fully realized by the worlds that we're going to share. So between Christopher and I, tech humanism is the bond. Last year, I gave a talk on teleportation, on traversing time and space, being unanchored to the linear, having 1 foot in real life, 1 foot in digital, and 1 foot in world, like 3 feet. But that talk too presaged my epiphany during my recent art residency. Over 2021, we all experienced a new way of living. We teleported into the future of education, into the future of work, into the future of entertainment, even dating. The question is, though, will we actually now embrace this version of the future, or are we going to pivot back now after taking a glimpse of this particular path? Are we going to carve a third way forward? I don't know. But we're on the cusp of a tribrid moment in real life, in digital, and in world, all collapsing into one. And very soon we're going to weave between these worlds seamlessly during any regular day of our life. So what grounds this discussion? It's a shared belief that we're all about to live through a creative renaissance, a total creative storytelling renaissance. But how do we create a passageway or passages, if you will, to unharness our collective imagination to get there? And doing it by creating space and the opportunity for the voice as well as the voiceless. One node is how the disability community responded to COVID. They were repeatedly told prior to COVID that remote work doesn't work, that remote work wouldn't work, and that remote work couldn't work. And they weren't offered a place at the table. But they came under the most tragic of circumstances, and they brought their own chairs. They were proven that it can work for all of us. So what's next? In my brainstorming sessions with Christopher this past month, I learned that he came from a tradition of impact. I shared his perspective with him, right? This fierce urgency of right now, until my art residency, where I was given a whole new perspective and lens to process Indigenous time by thinking 7 generations forward. I don't know if you even can think of 7 generations before you and what that required. So do Christopher and I have 2 competing viewpoints on being human, the urgency of now versus 7 generations forward? Not only does this idea of 7 generations inform how I want to respond personally to things like climate change or the 17 UN sustainability goals, but it makes me think about the intention during the next critical 5 years of tools building as we're building this foundation for the future. So, you know, I'm coining this next 5 years Operation Toolbox. The next 5 years is about building the tools necessary to truly be together. So what are those tools comprised of exactly? Well, Christopher knows, as he's coined a vision called the 7 standards of our future. So we're in this protopian era, the era of becoming. So how do we move through in real life, in digital, and in world over the next 5 to 10 years, knowing this as makers? So what is becoming human really going to mean? Does it mean that we're going to create a better self for us? Or are we going to finally see more people that we otherwise ignored? Are we going to celebrate what's unique about ourselves, our innermost selves, truly, right? Or are we going to pass for thin and young and white and straight and male? Are we going to give ourselves permission, right, to challenge our own belief systems, to fully express ourselves? I'm so excited to build a world where you can make up your own laws of physics, for example, when gravity isn't even a given. So we're in a moment of building and architecting both communal and decentralized, fueled by the NFT economy. Whether or not we're in a gold rush doesn't matter. I'm referencing both the Microsoft Activision and Unity's gaming article on NPCs. So in terms of human creativity and engagement, right? Let's talk about The Masked Singer for a second, the TV series on Fox. Let's talk about unharnessing creative expression and creative control of your identity and inclusion, right? So The Masked Singer was revolutionary, like The Voice in a way, because it separated out talent from visual character traits. So the costumes are over the top, which I totally love, but you're listening, another key Indigenous trait, more than you're looking at a singer to judge if they're beautiful enough to become famous, which should be irrelevant, right? These winners have talent and they defy convention. And this new movie called Belle from Japan, from the visionary director Mamoru Hosoda. So Belle is this masked singer, right? This masked singer of sorts. Belle's a pop star in the metaverse who's completely unknown in real life. Belle also shows the ability to reinvent online, heal from a loss, and become a superstar, but only in world. When I gave my talk on Meet Your Digital Twin back in 2018, and I've repeatedly given this talk, we mentioned the movie The Congress with Robin Wright of The Princess Bride, whose digital twin could work, but physically she couldn't. So these stories are going to continue to repeat themselves, right? And that was already 10 years ago. The storylines questioned our real identities, but soon our avatars are going to be accepted by everybody. And there's a biometric connection too between avatar and human. The worst thing that you could do in world is to dox someone or leak their personal or private info. So we should also talk about not needing pristine fidelity, like this Snapchat filter right now. It looks great, right? At the launch of YouTube, everybody spoke about the video quality just being good enough. So how much intimacy comes from fidelity, right? I've had a great deal of connection with low poly avatars and a hella good spatial audio component, and it felt super intimate. So this is where I would banter with Chris, right, about his vision of the animate economy and how it defies the use cases of I, of we, and our surroundings, even just with fashion alone. So the question I have for everybody, will we as content consumers, not makers, as consumers, ever wanted to create our avatar to match our real identity? Or are we just going to play in fantasy because we can? I want to make a pitch for invention, for experimentation, for curiosity, and most of all, for just play. We need to give ourselves this permission right now, just not just like the latitude to fail socially, but the latitude to have real fun, to truly be happy in all of this. I have been overweight, I have been thin, and I have yet to see somebody adopt an overweight avatar online. So when is there going to be some fat avatars online, and how's that going to be judged? I think I know. How about AI? When is there going to be intimacy with our avatars? And can we be vulnerable in fantasy if we can't even be vulnerable in real life? So how do we nudge a more informed content consumer? Is it by co-creation between us? Are we going to foster an environment where folks can explore their identities? And to Brené Brown one more time, because I always seem to bring up Brené, do we need shame researchers to be sitting next to coders in order to get a sense of belonging? Facebook and Instagram probably could have benefited from this some time ago. Moving on. Anyway, we've talked about the I and the we as humans and the human to human relationships. But let's talk about the room, right? Let's spatially ground this conversation by addressing the virtual worlds that surround us, because we're in one right now. The cross-pollinating of immersive, mixed realities, splicing together in real life, streaming digital, and in world. And I think we all can agree that we're re-blueprinting humanity right now, right? And to do this, we need community builders, not just game designers and game theorists, and I come from gaming. We need architects and city planners and community placemakers. We need organizers to spark life, to spark a new humanity. So our future is magical, right? With unbridled imagination. We need the creatives right now, and especially for the next 5 years. This is a repeat performance from 1994, 28 years ago, when I personally was told, Kathleen, we'll teach you the tech. We need to nurture the creatives for our future. And then I got called, I got tapped. So today, the creatives are the mixed reality storytellers, which should be frankly a combo of digital immigrants and digital natives and digital imaginatives, working in parallel to offer up wisdom, not just smart environments, right? Where storytellers, both seasoned and emerging, are invited and provide texture and richness in diversity in all of these technologies. From Web3 to NFT to NPC, from VolCap to mocap to avatars, from AR, VR, MR, from 180 to 360, from immersive broadcasting to virtual production, from 3D, 4D, 5D, 5G, from real-time to gaming to live streaming, from CGI to light stages, from AI and machine learning and data sets to data viz, to computer vision to gaze through hotspots, from IoT to LBE, from mobile VR to monoscopic VR, from room scale to 3DOF to 6DOF, from spatial audio to multimodal inputting, from voice recognition to facial recognition and to lip tracking, and biometrics from cloud to edge, and this list goes on. This isn't just twinning, making these cardboard figures or non-playable characters in the background. It's building tools and tapping into essence. It's its core essence that we're focused on, right? The passing down of oral stories to evoke feelings in everything that we build. So all of this quantifying humanity, architecting feelings. But how does, as Amy Jupiter puts it, proprioceptively hacking of feelings translate to virtual worlds? And how do our digital twins live in this space persistently? How does looking at all of this quantitatively take a toll on us? So what's my take on virtual worlds, the long view from the Indigenous people's point of view? Thanks to my residency, I learned something really simple, that a red cedar tree isn't just a tree. A red cedar tree is not just a tree in the Indigenous people's community. It's one of the largest and oldest life forms on Earth. It can be, I think, live to 1500 in age. It's been around for 50 million years. It's part of the cypress family, whose Latin definition is tree of life. It's known as mother, long life maker. All of this knowledge base to pull from when we create a tree, a red cedar tree in a virtual world. So for engineers in object design, a red cedar tree can't just be one and done and meta tagged in a world building library to be used as a tree. A red cedar tree is a repository for centuries of stories that Native people know. It's families that are convening. The red cedar tree represents canoeing and basket making and the health of salmon and the waterways. A red cedar tree is not an object. It's the ing, it's not the thing. It's both a living being and it's a historical artifact, yes, in parallel. It's also the foundation for our future. So how do you begin to code that? Is there going to be an elder shaman sitting next to a junior engineer? So in Silicon Valley, where like microdosing is like a lunch break meal, I'm thinking this is possible. So maybe this is where Christopher's 7 standards ignites all of us. If we're in Operation Toolbox right now, right? And if we get it right, we build the right tools that are embedded with essence, tools that are embedded with feelings, tools that we can just pull off the shelf and from libraries, from some of the biggest and littlest world building engines, tools that are infused with relational databases that level up our humanity in ways that we don't even know. So it's relational. Everything is a cause and effect. It's true embodiment, right? One step beyond empathy. So will we publish new worlds with embedded spiritual knowledge coupled with East, West, and Indigenous science? Western science has so much to learn from Indigenous science. And again, the phrase coined from the disability community applies here too, nothing about us without us. So consider bridging a long-term authentic relationship with the Indigenous community, and that is only if you're invited in, and also it's just for listening. So as the same goes for our teachings and learnings from the neurodiverse community, using all of our senses, right, to communicate, not just words. How do we create safe spaces to feel all of our senses? How do we navigate with smell? How do we navigate virtual worlds with a lack of mobility, with a lack of sight, with a lack of hearing, but we gain essence and embodiment? Once we solve for all of these communities, we raise the bar for humanity. So if meta is a thing, I'm interested in the ing, convening and journeying and storytelling and including and sharing and funding of all of this. So creators and content consumers are merging. And as part of that, content consumers are becoming aware of the pros and the cons, right, of being a creator. But perhaps there's going to be a shift where sharing and remixing is just the new watching. So I look at the next 10 to 20 year timeline in virtual worlds from a communal and leveling up point of view. I look at this kind of with the karate belt system in mind as a metaphor. Each belt represents a degree of knowledge base. There are 8 belts, right, to attain for black belt. Yellow, well, there's white and then yellow and orange and green and blue and purple and red and brown. And finally, there's black. And when we achieve black, we all finally speak the same language and we understand one another. That's how we level up. So will we all grow together during this core building tooling years, the colored belt years, the way I look at it, arriving at black belt together, sharing a knowledge base of understanding, ultimately humans and AI merging together, right? So who are we and what we teach as far as a shared verse is what we're looking at. So why call us futurists? Why not call us presentists? Doesn't that seem more self-actualized? Presentists, not futurists. I think I'm gonna now rename myself. Anyway, so I think Christopher and I complement one another here, right? Where the fierce urgency of now is built on the foundation of 7 generations backwards and forwards. Circling back to my black belt metaphor, leveling up and mastery demands equity and inclusion. So getting a black belt requires mentorship, investment, allyship, and Christopher obviously is like on fire creating this very thing with his mentorship program. So here's an observation, right? In America, since George Floyd, we've been opening conferences and convenings with Indigenous land acknowledgements. I've even done it myself, but it's not enough, right? They imply the absence of Indigenous folks who are very much alive and all with us. So how do we join and listen and include Indigenous culture and science and neurodiverse science as well? A call to action must start right now with each of you reaching outside of your network, bursting your own bubble. So let me add, in these spaces, standing beside developers, we also need philosophers. We need philosophers in these worlds that we endeavor and that we want to build, right? Their bread and butter is ontology, which is classification and explanation of entities, the nature of just being. So amid our collective COVID experience, it's become commonplace, right, to live on screen. But whereas in real life, influenced live online with remote work and world building, it's now bidirectional, right? The virtual can inform how we work, how we live, and how we love in real life. So that's new. So in essence, we're actually redefining in real life as we speak, not just defining the future. So as we consider these investments for 7 generations, remember that even a 1,500-year-old red cedar was just once a seed. And when that seed matures, it supports biodiversity and provides food and clothing and shelter to humans. It's truly the tree of life, right? What a metaphor for our future. So the best time to plant that tree, metaphorically, the red cedar or otherwise, is 28 years ago. The next best time is right now. Thank you so much for letting me join the Gatherverse Summit. I look forward to hearing everybody's talks. Thank you.